Okay, now we'll quickly move to the ages of 4 to 5. I just want to remind everybody again that all this information and the presentation is available and attached to this course. Also, you'll find more details about this in various recommending readings, which are also part of this course. Now, let's think about those more sophisticated and interesting things which children develop or fail to develop by this age. And let's quickly move to the area of their emotional development. These kids demonstrate rapid and unpredictable change of mood, may throw tantrums over minor frustrations. And you would recognize it in every store suddenly. A nice 4-year-old falls on the floor and starts banging, screaming, behaving in a horrible way over not getting an ice cream. This is an age when they do that. And actually, there is a reason for that. They're not doing it because they're misbehaving. They're not even doing this because they're spoiled. They're doing this because they experience a strong emotion and do not have the words to express it. It happens throughout. It kind of you'll have these tantrums also at the ages of 2 and 3. It just becomes much more marked at the age of 4. And what can we do to help our students who experience a strong emotion or a strong need and don't get it and don't have the words? We need to try and give them words. And those words shouldn't be, yes, of course, please get this ice cream, just shut up. These words should be, it is very annoying, or you're very angry because you're not getting ice cream. And yeah, that's it. You don't have to do much more than this. You don't necessarily have to give them, but you need to show them that you understand the emotion they experience. You've guessed it right, and you're willing to empathize with it. So an emotional understanding and giving these emotional words still doesn't equal with spoiling the child and giving up and giving in to kind of an unreasonable demand. But actually, it might look a little bit over the top, and it is a little over the top, and it is absolutely appropriate developmentally. Don't freak out. Another thing which children of this age are experiencing, they have their basic fears being very much developed. By basic fears, we talk about specific animals, darkness, monsters under the bed. This is the age in which it kind of really kicks in. And as we said, the best way for a child to learn to deal with anything or to learn any new skill or information is by play. You would see that if children of this age love something, they love scary stories. Not terrifying stories, developmentally appropriate scary stories. But if you look at children's books, it's always someone who's afraid, like a little elephant who was afraid of the darkness. And the elephant goes into the darkness and the elephant is scared. And he's going and he sees kind of shapes and all of this, and then kind of light comes out, and the elephant sees that nothing happened, everything is great, and he's just in his familiar kind of environment. Because the way they cope with these fears, they play them out. They play them out, and they read about them, and this is how they learn to control them better. So don't try and intentionally scare children in your lessons, not at all. But if you encounter a developmentally appropriate book which talks about one of those specific fears, don't be afraid to use it as part of your teaching. It's something which those children will be doing anyway as part of working through these kind of emotional difficulties they have. Help them out and give them words for that fear as well. And the next thing is basically two close points, is that those children, they experience emergence of conscience and advanced development of shame and guilt. Essentially, what is happening is those children start internalizing some systems of rules because a conscious, as we have it, came to us from somewhere. Okay, so as we were saying, that conscious came to us from somewhere. Usually, the emergence of it came from our parents, then from our school, because it's some sort of an internal system of rules we don't break, not because somebody will punish it, but because this is the way we experience the world. And this is when those children begin to develop this sense of conscious. And you can actually see very funny examples of it. For example, a child who approaches a cookie jar and starts talking to himself. Like, no, Billy, you're not supposed to have cookies. Billy, you're not supposed to have cookies. He goes into the jar, he takes the cookie. Bad Billy, naughty Billy, and he eats the cookie. So he's basically saying what his mom would tell him or his dad would tell him. It still doesn't stop him, but you can actually see this moment because it's like a moment after that, in terms of their development, this voice will become internal and it will become part of their worldview, and they will know that they shouldn't steal cookies from the jars. So this is a moment of this transition. So these children will be very curious and interested in different rules and what's allowed and what's inappropriate or inappropriate behavior, and they will feel guilty for doing something wrong. They will have a much stronger sense of shame. And on one hand, it's an excellent development because they're becoming kind of more moral and adult individuals. At the same time, we don't want them to develop a very harsh and aggressive consciousness. So we want them to have a flexible, but like stable yet flexible moral. Because an inflexible and very harsh moral, when the person does something wrong, and instead of just admitting how wrong it is, he starts destroying himself over that, creates a really difficult kind of, it makes this person's life very difficult when a person is so harsh on themselves. And the reason it happens is because at some point, those rules were installed in a very harsh and aggressive way. So we do set boundaries, we do set rules, we do tell those children when they broke those rules, but we're not harshly punishing them. We're not telling them that they're bad people for breaking something. We're just reinstating that these are the boundaries. And you might also show that you're disappointed that though they didn't manage to adhere to those boundaries. But a disappointment doesn't have to come as, oh my God, I'm so deeply disappointed in you. I'm shamed that you are my student, my son, or whatever. It's a genuine disappointment. I expected you to be able to do this, and you weren't, which is a bit disappointing. And the message is the same, but the strength is completely different. Now, socially, these kids are much better in developing social interactions, and they're very interested in doing this. But again, let's keep in mind, they are new to this. They don't exactly know how to. They will make plenty of mistakes. They will start relating to their friends and relate to them badly. They might take something away from someone who they call their friend. They might be nasty to them. Again, it's okay because actually this is a process in which they learn how to. And our objective is to teach them the best possible pro-social ways of being with others and giving them the tools of how to be nice, how to be friendly, how to be kind. These are things that they don't know how to do by themselves, and this is our objective because at this point we can talk to them about these things because they are developmentally geared and hungry for these tools because they are very interested. Now, another aspect of their development is that these kids will have imaginary playmates or companions or imaginary animals that they play with. And they will have conversations with them, they will play with them, they will share emotions with them. And it's all being like really well-developed relationship with an invisible friend. Don't worry, this is still not child psychosis. It's fine. If you see a child of 4 talking to himself, it's great. This is the way they process some sort of internal feelings, which it's a transitional way. It's like, because all of us adults, we talk to ourselves. And younger children, they mostly talk to their parents. And this is a moment of transition when you talk to yourself, but you talk to a different part of yourself, which is the imaginary friend. And these imaginary friends are very much to be loved, welcomed, and if a child starts telling you about them, listen to him and be curious, because a child will tell you great many things about the imaginary friend. He will be telling you things about himself or herself. And when you express a curiosity, so what does he like? What does he do? What games do you play? The child will sometimes tell you, and you'll get a completely different insight into the internal world of this child. Okay, so interestingly enough, an imaginary friend is not lying. It's imagination. It's pretend play. So it's not the child is not lying to us that an imaginary friend exists. The child creates and develops. So when we talk about it, what we're colluding with is with the child's imagination, and we're also kind of just getting an insight onto this internal world. Sometimes what might happen, which will get us a bit closer to lying, is when the imaginary friend will be doing the bad things the child is doing himself. And development of this little Jekyll and Hyde story. So like, no, I'm a good boy. It's who done this? James. Who is James? He's my friend. And it's very clear for you that the James. And then here you can actually have different tricks. Here you can actually try and teach James how to behave together with the child. So let's think together. What can we tell James? How can we make sure James never does this again? Even at this moment, you don't necessarily break this, but you're actually joined into this game, and in psychology it's called working in displacement. Okay. And now we naturally get into the next social feature. Those children experiment with lying. They will be telling lies. Sometimes those would be just clear lies. Sometimes those would be exaggerations. So you would often see a child, and me and my dad went fishing, and we've got a fish which was that big. So obviously the fish was that big, and they didn't catch it at the pool because there was no fish this day. They went and bought it in the supermarket. But these sort of things are not to be stopped. It's actually, those exaggerations are fine. What they might do is, for example, direct, clear lies. So you would see a child all covered in chocolate, and you would ask him, so what happened to the child? You ate all the chocolate? He said, no. And you're looking at it like, no, like, look at yourself in the mirror, you're all covered in chocolate. I know that you ate all the chocolate. And the child like, no. So this is, actually these lies are also not to be punished for. Because it's not a child of a poor moral standard who's like fraudulent and lies to his adults, which is very often the way adults respond to it. And they tell them off for lying. It's like, you never lie to mommy, or you never lie to daddy. It's really wrong. Our task here is actually to show them that you can see through their lies. And in some ways to teach them lie better. Because the skill they are developing is not the skill of lying. The skill they are developing at this point is the skill of knowing that some things which I have in my mind might not be identical in my mom's mind. And they love it because initially they have an idea that their mind is absolutely open to everybody, and that we as adults can't mind read them. And this is how they're developing the boundary between words, actions, perceptions, and of course, if the children are, so we, in a way, we need to help them to lie a little bit better. But actually, if they lie over something which is a bit nasty, then you can actually say to them that, and actually, it's really not nice to do something. But you don't persecute them for these lying attempts. You're showing them that you can see through it. What very closely links to what we were just saying is a development of theory of mind, because this is another massive leap which actually allows them then to become better liars, because they learn more about their own minds, minds of others, and they also realize that minds are opaque. And what do you mean by opaque? You cannot see through. So those children will actually gradually learn to express their emotions better as well, to ask for the emotions of others. And we need to give them an experience in which it's okay and is very welcomed. So we do want to talk to them a lot about how they feel, why different people experience different emotions as a response to different events, why something which makes one person sad would not make another person sad. This is how they gradually develop this capacity, which is absolutely crucial for all of us adults, is to be able to know yourself and to know others, and to know that others can have a significant effect on you and you can have a significant effect on others. The next thing, which is actually often occurring, is that children around this age, they will start experimenting with what with adult children we will call bullying. They will use name calling, taunting as ways of excluding others. So, and they will use some nasty words towards other children. Again, here, this is something which we need to put a clear boundary around. It's understandable that they need to do it, so we're not punishing them for this very harshly, as we're generally trying not to punish children very harshly. We basically would tell them, no, this is not how we treat each other in the classroom. If they fight physically, we're stopping them very, very clearly, because the physical safety is obviously a massive priority for us. And then what we normally would help them to say is, you were angry with X. And we teach them to say, next time, don't hit him, tell him something, tell him, I'm angry with you. Okay? So we teach them to move from physical action to verbal expression, and we give them words for this verbal expression, and also we set for them very clear behavioral boundaries of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And this is the end of our talk about the ages 4 to 5, 5 to 6 coming. Another great feature which is being developed with children between the ages of 4 to 5 is a fully developed pretend play. What does it mean? They can enjoy assuming different roles in different social situations and play out those roles. What they also can do at this age, as it's a fully developed capacity, they can suggest their own additions. So they're not fully dependent on the adults on elaboration of this play. They are actually capable of contributing elements to this story from their imagination. However, for many children, unfortunately, this capacity is not fully developed. Mainly for one simple reason, parents who might not know how to pretend play themselves. And it happens more often than you would expect. So our task is to actually help those families to give the capacity of pretend play to the children. And what you would sometimes encounter is setting up a pretend play situation in a child who is not really able to contribute. He can only kind of follow your lead, even in the age of 4 to 5, and sometimes even in the ages of 5 to 6. So what we really need to do, we need to facilitate pretend play, because it's not just developmentally appropriate, it's also developmentally important. Because people who don't develop later on in life a full capacity for creative and imaginative pretend play, will have significantly less creativity and capacity for creativity in any job they do. And an example I often bring as a difference between people who were able to develop pretend play and not is from the IT industry, which is actually quite a technical area, but someone without a developed pretend play capacity will be able to be a good programmer. He will be able to write a code and transfer, in a way, intentions into computer code. What this person will struggle with is with being, for example, an algorithm development, because this would require much broader imaginative thinking, also in quite a technical area, but a degree of an ability to play with reality, to play with ideas and see how they interrelate between one another, than someone who has developed a full potential of the pretend playing. So when we teach those children to pretend play, we're giving them a crucial skill, which they will definitely be using a lot.